Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawkblogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser, and it's a Sunday, and it's the last Sunday for, well, actually, that's not true. We got 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We got one more Sunday without NFL football, so I lied to myself there. But we've got Jeff Simmons, my good pal, with us to talk about all things Seahawks and the NFL. Jeff, man, how are you doing today?
I'm all right. I'm all right. I was looking forward to yesterday a little more, and that was a little bit of a bummer. But overall, it's an okay. It's a nice day out. It's still the summer, but I'm ready for football season. I'm tired of this preseason thing.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say I was looking forward to the game yesterday. Like, not that I was not looking forward to it, but the third preseason game and that was a weird one too. I mean, we'll talk about it obviously, but I'm used to the third preseason game being all third string guys and guys that are fringe NFL players plus guys that are fringe 53-man roster players. And so it's just like, it's barely football at that point. And then you throw into this weird thing where the Packers played their starters for against the Seahawks third string. Like, that was weird. We've seen that now a couple of times where the Raiders played their starters and the Seahawks didn't. I'm not used to that kind of imbalance between teams.
Yeah, there used to be when it was 4 preseason games, it was every team had the same steady buildup. It was like the first game they'd get nothing, second game they'd get a series, then they'd play a half, and then the fourth game you wouldn't see them at all. And it was much easier to just set your mind. Now teams are going like Mahomes played a bunch the other night, and Geno Smith played a little last night, and then most of the teams in the league didn't play a single player. So it's more of a me problem that I think the Jalen Milroe thing, just playing the whole game, got me kind of geeked up. But you know me, I should know enough about this. Where within 5 minutes of watching, I was like, this is stupid. What am I doing? So wasting my time. So it was, and I'll be honest, the Seahawks roster from like probably 60 to 90 is just frankly not very interesting. And yeah, it was weird that the Packers were playing starters, and I don't know if it's what Matt LaFleur was doing with that one, but and even after the game, like when you get beaten like that, usually the coach is kind of mad. Like, I don't know if you caught any of what Mike said. He didn't seem to care that much. He seemed to have the big picture in mind, and I thought that was very telling of just it was a classic fourth or third preseason game that really we learned very little.
Well, if I would have been more interested if Jalen Milroe had been playing with guys around him that he wasn't normally playing with. And to some extent, that was true. He played a little bit with Derek Young. He played with Jake Bobo and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and some of those guys. But the offensive line, that third string offensive line was struggled, man. And they've struggled all preseason for the most part. And everyone's going to talk about Milroe. We'll talk about that for sure. But there was no room to run. And I've got a copium take for you, Jeff.
Okay, let's
which
hear
is, all of us trying to decide, like, okay, is this offensive line as good as it looks? Like, can we trust anything we're seeing in the preseason? Well, if you look at the third string offensive line and how it's blocked during the preseason for the run in particular, the gap between how it's performed and how the first string and even to some extent the second string performed is pretty huge. And so maybe there's a little bit you could take from that that this group is not doing it while another group is on the same team. Maybe that's an indication that that there is a reason to be hopeful about that starting line.
Yeah, and because typically when you have like the Shanahan offensive lines and the old Gary Kubiak, Mike Shanahan stuff, what they really did, and Tom Cable really became known for this, where he was bouncing around with Atlanta, was they would take guys who weren't that talented and put them into an offense, and they could get them cohesively to play really well. And that's what made this scheme always work. You can just drop a running back in there. You can drop a guard. The coaches from that scheme are just like, you can find anyone. The Seahawks have a pretty talented offensive line. It's young, and they haven't been good historically, but like Grace Abel is a first-round pick. Abe Lucas is a very talented player. He would have been at least a second-round pick had he didn't have concerns. Charles Cross at left tackle. Jalen Sundell athletically and Anthony Bradford athletically are very talented players. I wouldn't say they're good players all the way yet, but they have a lot more talent than like who you typically see. Like at Shanahan's team, they got Jake Brendel and Ben Barch and Dominic Pooney's a good player, don't get me wrong, but even like the Super Bowl teams in San Francisco, their talent was Trent Williams and kind of a bunch of guys that guys have gone elsewhere and haven't really heard their name anymore. What makes this group kind of intriguing, I know they're young and they haven't been good, but there is talent. And their third string line doesn't have much talent. And it's a bunch of either drafted guys or sixth or seventh rounders. And one of the things that makes preseason football, especially when the starters come out so unwatchable, is just no team has a good third string. Most teams don't even have a good first string offensive line. And so it makes it really hard to watch. And there's a couple of guys like Bryce Cable who's been very quiet in camp. He was a project. He seems pretty far from being an NFL player. Mason Richmond was a 7th round guy that wasn't really on anyone's draft radar. There's just not a lot of talent there. And I don't think there's any scheme or any system that could really help that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Bryce Cable, who it seems like an awesome guy and easy to root for and all that kind of stuff. He's probably the guy that has been most disappointing relative to my expectations going into camp. This is a guy I was excited, like wanted the Seahawks to draft, thought could be a really good developmental player, was a tackle in college and struggled in pass protection, but was the classic kind of, okay, he's a good fit for this scheme. Move him into guard. Maybe some of those pass protection issues get mitigated by having guys on either side of him instead of being on an island. Instead, Jeff, he looks like when Justin Britt got moved to guard, as opposed to, when Dominic Pooney got moved to guard. So he's been a turnstile. I think he's really, really struggled in pass pro. He has seemed to climb above the depth chart above Sataola Lamea, which is crazy. And I just don't know if Lamea is just a gap scheme fit and not a good fit for this. I think Lamea had another false start penalty yesterday. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the depth should have been better, and it just hasn't been. So, that was definitely like, I think for the most part, the draft picks have gone either the way I expect them or better. The two guys that I would say have been a little bit under my expectations in that draft class have been Bryce Cable and Nick Emanwari. And I'm not like down on Nick Emanwari. I just would say, I have very high expectations, and he was a pretty high draft pick. And I'm not sure he's lived up to that yet. So that's where I'm at with those two guys.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And yeah, with Cable like the draft media, the guys who study like the analytics and the athletic scores, his name just kept popping up as just a guy, like under the radar guy. And we have seen a lot of tackle to guard converts across the league. And a lot of teams like the Bucks, for example, have had really good success with smaller school left tackles moving over to inside. And so when they drafted him, it just seemed like a hand in glove fit because of his athleticism and what he can do. But some guys, projects take time. Like, look, Anthony Bradford's in his 3rd year, and he's really just starting to needed a coaching change. And yeah, I would agree, though. You would expect someone just who's been playing at the college level and isn't just like a pure Mike Jarrell raw prospect. But I was wondering why they were looking at Dalton Reisner the other day. And now that we've seen Lamea and we hear that Christian Haynes has a pec injury and we don't know how long he's going to be out, he might be an IR guy now. It kind of explains it. They probably don't feel very good about who their backup guard is. If Bradford stinks or if someone gets hurt, and all of a sudden I can see why they wanted to see what kind of shape he's in, and kind of makes sense because I don't know who would be next up in line if there is an injury because Haynes is probably going to go on the IR and miss at least 4 games. He might be out for a while. So the Lamea thing has been weird because he really boosted the group last year. I know of the gap. We saw the gap system, but I don't know if the coaches just didn't see a fit here. He was never really given a chance to get into the competition, and he just looks like a different player. Like, he had a lot of confidence last year, and the fact that he was playing over Christian Haynes last year said what the previous staff thought of him. So he's really just kind of fizzled out of this thing.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, there's a couple of roster things I want to talk through with you, and then we'll kind of go around the division as well. And there's some fringe Seahawks news we can talk about as well. But We should get to the Jalen Milroe conversation because he was the main event yesterday.
Sure.
And before I give my take, I want to hear your take on. I mean, obviously you didn't watch the whole game, but of what you saw, what was your takeaway from that game?
He looked really raw, just running through the operation in the first half, and like I remember when I watched Malik Willis play coming out of a really small school, and you've seen so many of these guys over the years where they just don't look comfortable running out of the huddle, operating, calling the offense. And I expected to see more like passes that were inaccurate or things that looked a little crazy. But it wasn't that. It was just he looked jumpy. He looked really jumpy. And the thing that I'd say a lot of people expected that he was a raw player. There was a reason I was very uncomfortable taking him in, say, the second round. But the thing that disappointed me, I think, just for the season is he doesn't seem to be that comfortable as a weapon in short yardage running the ball. And even if you ignore like the fumble yesterday, they've had a bunch of plays this preseason where it's been 4th and short, 3rd and short, and they've gone for them every time, which I commend them for. Pete Carroll would have probably punted on all of them. But I thought that he would just be such a weapon in those short yardage situations with his speed. He just seems to like go out wide and then kind of look and then doesn't realize how fast the game is at this level and he's still trying to use just pure talent. I'm nervous that he's not going to be that much of a weapon in the short yardage situations because it just doesn't look comfortable at all in any of these spots where he's really just like you figure just a boot action roll. And you see the tools like when he did the play action pass to MVS yesterday, like that looked great. The throw to Cody White on the sidelines, the touchdown throw, it all looked pretty good. But he just, I thought he'd be way more comfortable as just a runner in space or just even like a short yardage runner. I think that's disappointed me more than anything else. And it's not really on him. I just thought he would be that 4th down weapon to unlock a big part of their team that's been a problem. And he still looks skittish in that area. And that's disappointing to me.
Yeah, I mean, I looked up the fumble thing a little bit because honestly, when I was at the Senior Bowl and his measurements came out, it was under 9 inches on his hands. That is historically a point of no return for quarterbacks. That is like you got to have at least minimum 9-inch hands to get it. Now, there's Kenny Pickett, who went through famously hand stretching to get over 9 inches by the combine, and Jalen Milroe miraculously had larger hands at the combine and whatever. But the fact of the matter is he has small hands. And having watched Dave Craig a long time ago, who struggled with small hands and fumbling a lot as a quarterback, I was like, all right, is this going to be an issue? It's going to be an issue for him to hold on to the ball. I was interested to see how he'd throw the ball last week in the rain. Right. Yeah. Like there's all these things I've been paying attention to. And up until now, hasn't been an issue. I've not seen him fumble the football. I've not seen him struggle with snaps. I've not seen him lose the ball like when, he's gotten hit, all those things. So it turns out, I mean, he had some fumbles in college for sure. But he was not among the top quarterbacks in fumbling the football. And so to some extent, I'll just give him a pass of he's probably going to be a guy that does have ball security issues. Like that's just probably a reality of having smaller hands. But I think the part that it was a little like there's two things that were concerning for me. One of them's more foundational.
Yeah.
As far as the way he played, when he creates it, I don't feel particularly hopeful. Like I think his decision-making on the move and in crisis seems to be flawed. It does not seem like when he like there's players like Russell Wilson, like Lamar Jackson, like Patrick Mahomes that when they break the pocket, you're like, oh shit. Like, oh man, they're going to do something to break my heart. Whether it's in the first game that he had a 4th down and I thought he had an easy chance to run for it and he chose to pass it 20 yards downfield for a tough throw and couldn't complete it. Whether it's this time he had a 4th down and he's like, I'm going to run it this time when he had very little chance of gaining it on the ground and didn't get it. He just doesn't seem like his decision-making in those situations is great. And it may relate to the other thing, Jeff, which is everybody was like drooling over his post-game press conference. I don't know if you heard any of his press conference.
I saw like the remarks around it. I didn't watch the press conference myself.
So he's, by all accounts, great kid, hard worker, great young man, I should say, but like hard worker, like got good grades, military parents, like all that structure seems, positive. But when I hear him talk sometimes in the 2 post-game press conferences he's done, it feels very scripted. It feels very, I'm saying what I'm supposed to be saying. I'm not sure he fully understands is the wrong way to characterize it, but I'm not sure I believe the authenticity of what's going on there. And not that he's, I don't even know authentic is the right word. It's if you've grown up with people that just like know what they're supposed to do and say what they're supposed to do, but then like left to their own independence, can they make their own decisions and kind of think on their own feet?
Yeah.
That's what's coming through is like, I'm not sure I'm hearing Jaylen. I think I'm hearing what Jaylen thinks he's supposed to say. And that kind of shows up a little bit in the way he plays. Like, I think he's doing what he thinks he's supposed to do as opposed to instinctually playing the position. And that could just be something that comes with time.
Yeah, I didn't see the press conference, so it's pretty hard for me to comment on that one. Like that was a big thing with obviously Russ. Like he felt like a politician rather than a person. And when people first meet him, they all fall for him. And after a while, it's just you want to hear a real answer. And I would have loved to hear like Milroe's real emotion coming out of that game. And he does just sound very polished, but I can't really comment. But it was just the hardest part about that game. And I'm not like selling all my stock in Milroe or anything like that. I expect it to be jumpy and finicky, especially playing with, but it just wasn't that interesting.
Yeah.
That concerned me the most because his skill set and his flashes should be super fun. And I was really hyping up these preseason games. We're going to get to see this quarterback that's really fun. And some of it was the code. They called a lot of run pass. There wasn't a lot of play action. And the one time they play action on first down was that wicked throw to MVS again down the field. But it just looked kind of static. And there was just 4th and short down in the scoring range again. He just runs out right. He kind of looks like what you said. Doesn't seem to have a great decision. Tries to cut by 3 guys. You figure with his skills and with his coaching, they'd be able to, and maybe they're kind of keep it in the back pocket. Maybe they're not trying to show anything. But I just thought he would be such a weapon. Again, they had Taysom Hill last year, and he's more of a power guy than anything else. But if just like a boot action roll on downs and so far it's just been like very vanilla read option, him sprinting out right, him play action, him trying to just roll out and find a passing lane. It hasn't really been interesting. And again, there's a lot of people that were like, well, like I don't understand why they got Drew Lock. And I think watching Milroe for a full game, it's pretty, and I think we talked about this last week. It's pretty clear why they got Drew Lock, and Drew Lock looked really good relative to what Milroe showed in the preseason. And I'm not saying Drew Lock is good. I know exactly what Drew Lock is at this point, but Milroe's a very developmental player. He absolutely looked like it. I just thought it'd be more kind of dazzling, more fun. And it was kind of boring.
Yeah. And I think there's something to that. I don't think that's just because of his surroundings or the situation. And if I didn't have the benefit of having watched him in practices, I'd have a much different take. Like there are people already like, hey, see, he's not very good. He stinks, he does not look like the player in games that I've seen in practice. And there's been a couple of moments, but I mean, I was not super positive, optimistic about him as a passer coming into training camp. And he has shown me a lot, both in his way of processing progressions, accuracy, his footwork, his willingness to pass and not turn to his legs too quickly. To like when he's in the game so far, it's like all the young quarterback things come up, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's exactly
as soon as the pressure happens, his eyes go down. He's not looking downfield. So even creating on the run is harder. There's just a lot of stuff that it feels like I was to characterize it, Jeff, it's a guy that's learning how to play the position that doesn't yet trust it. It's not internalized to the point where he can bring it out on the football field when guys are running full speed at him. Like, it's probably just going to take a little while longer for those habits to develop and for those to transfer onto the game field.
Yeah. And look, everyone knew he was raw. I hope people aren't just like, this guy isn't good. Like, he's a bum, anything like that. Like you said, I think everything you talked about at the beginning kind of ties in together with the one idea is he just hasn't really looked like he's cut it loose yet, either personality wise, playing wise. His instincts look a little finicky. And when we get to see that, the fact that you've seen it at practice and you see what he seems like when he does cut it loose, that's the player we want to see. And the speed of the game, the processing, that's the stuff a raw player like Milroe really needs to learn. And that's where he should be the third string quarterback. And again, Jalen Hurts had a very similar college career, and it took him a couple years before he started playing. I heard Ross Tucker say there's a lot of similarities there. Hurts was taking a full round or so before him. And I don't think we should think Milroe is going to be the next Jalen Hurts, but this thing's going to take time. And so for all the people who are kind of getting their cart ahead of the horse, like, this guy's got to be the backup quarterback, I think we got a bit of a reality slap yesterday, and that's fine. He's a developmental player, and I just wish he looked a little bit more clean as a short yardage runner. I think that's the thing that really stuck with me yesterday.
I think he can be better than Jalen Hurts. I still, even with what I've seen, like I think Jalen Hurts has had the most glow up of an offseason for any quarterback that had like 100 yards passing in the playoffs until like the Super Bowl. Like, I mean, that guy, great, has been a great runner, but I still see huge limits as a passer. And I've seen passing from Jalen Milroe in practice that, like, arm talent that I just haven't seen from Jalen Hurts, to be honest. And he certainly isn't throwing to AJ Brown and the receiving core that Jalen Hurts has to work with. So, and I see people chat like, hey, like, of course it matters who he's playing with. Well, sure. But I mean, I've seen other quarterbacks play with third string players and make better plays.
Elevate them.
Yeah. And this was not a disastrous game. I think some people are, characterizing that. I don't see it that way. It was just rough. Like, it was a rough game, and the three fumbles, like, even if he hadn't made the last fumble, like from the snap that went through his hands and they'd scored another touchdown, I think he'd probably walk away feeling like, all right, that's fine, but three fumbles is a lot, dude.
It is. And the QB sneak fumble, like, I know one of the guys we were talking with yesterday had a real trouble with that one. And again, I see people in the chat already fighting like whether they should have drafted someone else with that pick. Or look, I love the Jared Wilson guy. I wanted him in the second round. But when they took Milroe, we all had an idea. Like, this was a flyer on the most important position in the sport. And if you thought this was going to be like a smooth roller coaster ride, like, there's a reason he's in there, pick 89 or whatever it was, 92. I can't remember what it was. This is kind of what it looks like. And the Flyers, we have no idea where this is going to go next, but the first dose of preseason was rocky. And I think some of that has to do with who he's played with, and some have to do with play calling, but this is going to take time. Like, we're hoping by the time we see him play next year, it looks a lot cleaner. And that's probably the next time we'll be seeing him play quarterback outside of a couple plays here and there is probably next year in the preseason.
Yeah. I mean, there's the thing that is really positive there is, he's going to work his tail off. There's no question about that. He's going to do everything he's told. He's going to rep it. He's going to try to learn. He's going to ask questions. The work ethic's just going to be extraordinary. And I think my biggest question for him right now, I'm trying to figure out the best way to articulate it, but I think to some extent you have to have played sports to get it. But like, I'll use myself as an example. Not that I'm comparing myself to Milroe, but like basketball, played varsity basketball in high school, even though I'm not the tallest guy. And the coach, we would draw up plays. We'd practice the plays, screen here, roll there, whatever. I would run the plays exactly as they were drawn up. Like, that's how in my head you were supposed to play. The best players on our team, they would shoot the ball in situations. Well, that's not how the play is drawn up. but they knew how to play the game and not just like stay within the exact like
robotic,
right?
yeah,
And that's I struggled with that. And so that's the part for me that's the kind of the question that's going to linger for a little bit until I see examples of, okay, now he's in control and he's actively making his own decisions about what to do, as opposed to I am trying to throw it in this way and I'm on the run. And I think the game's a little fast for him right now. Hopefully that's all it is. But I am super glad that the Seahawks have put themselves in a situation to have a year, 2 years, maybe longer before they need to even really put pressure on him to get on the field.
exactly.
Which is interesting because Jeff, trade news this morning and some other stuff going on. Former Seahawks backup quarterback Sam Howell gets moved again from the Vikings to the Eagles, and the Vikings do probably pretty well for themselves, getting a 5th round. Now it's a draft pick exchange, a 5th for a 6th, but that's not the worst return for Sam Howell.
Oh, it's surprising that they found a taker, and I think they just took advantage that I think the Eagles' backup quarterback is injured, and they don't know when he's going to be back. So they got very fortunate timing wise, and I think the Raiders also had a backup quarterback injury yesterday. So there's some reason if you want to hang on to a quarterback and wait for a trade, you might actually have a market at this time of year. And it sounded like the Howell thing went very similar to last year. And I sent you guys a couple of clips early in training camp, and it just sounded like he was having a rough camp again in Minnesota. And I had this annoying fear when we traded him because Kevin O'Connell was just like unlocked every quarterback. It seems like that he was going to go there and play well. And every Seahawks fan will be like, why did we give this guy away? And I'm like, oh my God, this guy stinks. And I saw enough of him through a couple weeks of camp. In the preseason game, what I saw, one Viking game looked horrible.
Mm-hmm.
They signed Carson Wentz off the street already today. So Wentz signed with them. They replaced him. And Howell might get cut by the time Tanner McKee gets back. And last year, everyone who was at camp, you included, just talked about how bad Sam Howell looked. Really makes you wonder, like a couple of years ago when he played here with Pete Carroll's last year where they were running that Clint Hurtt defense, he looked really good against them. Maybe not the best look a couple of years later. It's probably why they trade for him.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a history of guys playing well against the Seahawks, like Sam Darnold, and then getting signed to the Seahawks. Yeah, so part of the reason I bring that up is the Howell piece, but there was also there was a backup quarterback that got injured. Gosh, I'm spacing on this.
With the Raiders, Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah, the Raiders lost Aiden O'Connell, right? And there's these situations where if Jalen Milroe had really looked precocious to where it's like, man, the Seahawks are fooling themselves that they are going to have Drew Lock as their backup, the Seahawks could be getting maybe a 5th round pick of their own, maybe more, but probably not. If they were to be trading Drew Lock right now. And I think you and I agree there's just no chance that's going to happen.
How funny would it be if the Raiders had Geno Smith and Drew Lock as their quarterback?
Yeah, I think that would have been a real possibility.
Oh my God, that would have been so funny.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think Drew Lock's spot is safe on this team. And I think there is some question heading into the season whether Jalen Milroe will be active on game days. I didn't think there was going to be any question about whether he'd be active on game days, but I think having the ball security issues he had in this game have to give the coaching staff a little bit of pause about whether that's the right thing to do. For like, do they want to give the rookie a few weeks before they activate him? Do they want to see a little bit more? I'm curious. Like, what if you had to guess right now, week 1 against the 49ers, is Jalen Milroe on the active game day roster?
For week 1, I'd probably say no. I don't think they're going to come out and try to like show all this fancy stuff against Shanahan and Saleh, who they know really well, especially coming out of this game. I think they're going to develop. I think they're going to take their time with this thing. They're going to want to work on it with the practice squad. I would say no.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too. And We'll find out. There's obviously a couple weeks left to go. There are a couple other parts of that roster that I'm curious about. Jake Bobo had a serious injury yesterday. Thank God. It's not great to say thank God it's just a concussion, but I mean, it looked really, really bad when it happened yesterday, Jeff. And so I'm just happy he was able to walk off. And there's this interesting thing. MVS, Jake Bobo, Derek Young at the back end of that receiver room. And when I projected my last roster, I had MVS off of it. Everyone else kind of looked at me like I was crazy. But then yesterday, Jeff, MVS played, and Brady Henderson, when he speaks, I always listen because he tends to know some things. And he said MVS's roster spot is not secure, and the fact that he played speaks volumes. What do you think is going to happen there?
I would keep my eye on a trade. And the Vikings were trying to trade for Adam Thielen this week, and apparently they've made a couple small trades this week where they've added a bunch of 5th, 6th rounders. They traded, I can't remember who they traded. They've traded a couple small guys, and they need a receiver because Jordan Addison's out. And I think that's a team that Seattle could go to. The Jets are another one where they don't have a second receiver. It's very odd. They're going to run the ball with Justin Fields, but like Josh Reynolds, I think, is literally their number 2. And that guy was like on the street last year. And so I'm guessing they were showcasing him yesterday. He actually was one of the few players that looked pretty decent. I think the big question with me, and I think Brady or you would know, is what's going on with Torrey Horton. And now, especially with Bobo going to be out at least, I don't know how long you're out with a concussion, but he might be out a couple weeks. If Horton's not up, who's your third receiver for opening day? Is that Derek Young? So MVS might make the team if he's going to, if they can't work out a trade of just pure situation. And the big thing to me is the Horton injury, because Mike kind of indicated yesterday, based on 3 quarterbacks, tight ends, running back, probably going to keep 5 receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And especially that they don't run a lot of 11 personnel. So that's a lot of 3 receivers. It's going to be mostly Kupp and JSN, and you're mixing them for different personnel groups, but heavy offense with tight ends, Oots. I think they're going to try to trade this guy, and I think that's a very possible scenario.
I think that I don't know. It shouldn't annoy me, but like the fact that yesterday it became a story because I think Greg Bell asked about, is 5 receivers a possibility? And then Mike Dugar was like, yeah, he said it's a possibility. I'm like, guys, like, look at the roster math. Like, of course it's a possibility. It's been like, you look at the personnel packages and then you look at the players. I would go as far as to say, Jeff, if they keep 6 receivers, it's a mistake. It's a mistake. They're going to regret keeping an extra receiver for the way that this offense is going to operate. That means you're stealing an offensive lineman. That means you're stealing potentially a defensive lineman, a defensive tackle, like a inside backer, all these places where you actually have more need. It would be a mistake. And the Bobo injury, I think everyone's jumping to because it looked so bad that he's going to be out for the first week. I mean, there's 2 weeks until the season. Sure. I'm not at all assuming that he's not going to be available. And one of the very minor storylines that only people like you and I that watch everything would focus on, Jake Bobo catching punts the last couple weeks. I think he would be a great punt returner. I know bad thing happened yesterday, but he's sure-handed. He's tough, and that would mean Steven Sims is a guy you really just don't have to worry about. And if you do have some issue, let's say you trade MVS, I think Cody White is a fine practice squad guy to call up until you're back to full strength with Bobo and whoever else. So I think that if you can get anything for MVS, I think you take it. And I don't think that you will regret it at the end of the day. I don't think if it turns out that not having MVS is the reason you lose a division, you probably just weren't that interesting of a team anyway.
Yeah, and there's guys out there in free agency that you can probably pick up. Gabe Davis is still out there that have the same kind of skill set. But a lot of people forget about this roster map is the practice squad. The practice squad is basically a ghost roster. And everyone's like, well, they got to keep Steven Sims, who like no one had no bites in free agency. Like if they think Jake Bobo is a better returner, you can just put Sims on the practice squad and call him up if you have an injury. Or it's Cody White. He seems like a perfectly good practice squad kid. But MVS, like if they cut him, someone would probably claim him off waivers or someone would pick him up after. So part of the roster math is figuring out who can we sneak to the practice squad, because that gives you, especially now where it doesn't just have to be guys on rookie contracts, you can keep veterans as well. That is way more of a reason to keep 5 receivers, especially with like the bottom of the roster guys are not guys I'd expect to like go through waivers and get claimed. There's just so many receivers in the league, and to claim someone else's like 6th receiver, they'd have to have special kind of talent. And I don't think they have a problem there. I think someone's going to trade for MVS.
Yeah, I wanted to pull this up because we spent it made me laugh last year. We spent all this time on predicting the 53-man roster, and it always ends up being, Jeff, we're talking about guys that like just don't do anything. Like come the season, it just doesn't really. Here, let me make sure I've got this here.
Well, while you're doing it, I can talk for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was like people losing their crap last year over Jamie Sheriff, and I like Jamie Sheriff. He's a fun player, but he was claimed by Carolina, who had the highest spot, and people were losing their minds. These guys don't know what they're doing. Jamie Sheriff played a couple weeks, and he was back on the Seahawks practice squad. So a lot of the guys we're talking about at the bottom of the roster, there's been, over the years, there's been the Michael Bennett screw up by Tim Ruskell. That was a disaster. There hasn't really been a lot of other ones. Like the guys that got picked up that turned out to be decent were on that 2013 team that turned out they just had insane depth. But
right.
Cason Williams, like I can't believe they cut Cason Williams. Richard Sherman was going nuts.
Yeah.
Well, these guys are playing against people that are going to end up in the CFL where I am. It's probably not the most telling of what they're going to be against the starters. And so, we got,
so these are some of the guys at the tail end of the roster last year. Laviska Shenault, Aesop Winston, like Cody White, D. Eskridge. Those were like the receiver conversations. At the tight end last year, Tyler Mayberry. And then on offensive line, you were talking about Garrett Greenfield and Raekwon O'Neal and McClendon Curtis. And, defensive line, the back end of that room was Miles Adams. And then inside linebacker was like Michael Barrett, John Radigan, edge players, Nelson Caesar, Jamie Sheriff, like you were saying. And then cornerback, DJ James and Lance Boykin, and safety, Marquise Blair and Ty Okada, right? Like, so these are not the players that are going to make or break your team. This is just the last kind of death rattle of preseason. And now you turn to which of the teams that have the best 22, maybe the best 25, depending on how much depth gets out there.
That's the part that always I try to pour. There's always like, if you want to remember the best preseason I've maybe ever seen, it was like Nick Reed back in the day, and that never amounted to anything. So you got to be careful what you see. And I always talk about that. Like you've seen guys like Joe Milton come in the last week of the regular season. And funny, I mentioned this to you on text. I found out there's like a huge contingent of Patriots fans that hate Joe Milton. And I don't know if that's why they traded him, because because of that game, he cost them Abdul Carter, and they would have had the second pick. And so I'm not just calling out Joe Milton randomly. Just we spend so much time on some of this minutia. But like you said, once the season turns on and the actual players start coming, it's about the blue chip guys. It's about who is the best offensive line and defensive line. So the Ty Okadas, respectfully, who had a great game yesterday, a great moment. We're talking about guys who are going to be on probably on the inactive squad on game days. So I don't think we need to spend too much time worrying about what we're going to do with MVS.
We'll get into kind of some general thoughts, and if you have other things you want to bring up, feel free in a moment. But just kind of a quick tour around the NFC West.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that Ben Barch, the left guard for the 49ers, has also been out with an injury for a while, and it's an undisclosed injury, and there's some question about whether he'll be ready for the beginning of the season. So you could have a Ben Barch and Dominic Pooney missing situation early. Jacob Cowing, who's a receiver that just came back, just got re-injured and is going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, something along those lines. There is some word that Juwan Jennings, at least Kyle Shanahan said from a health perspective, will be ready for week 1. But the fact that he said health means that maybe Jennings may push the issue about the contract. Jeff, I was looking at the projected 49ers final roster. Dude, I don't understand the hype. I just don't get it. Like, let me read you the receiver room that's projected. Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Jordan Watkins, Russell Gage, and Sky Moore.
Russell Gage got hurt yesterday.
Right.
He's not even, yeah.
And like their tight ends, George Kittle, great. Luke Farrell and Braden Willis. The defensive line outside of Nick Bosa, Micah Williams sounds like he might be back at practice. Alfred Collins has not been good. CJ West has been injured. Jordan Elliott, Kevin Givens hurt a pec. He's going to miss the first part of the season. So Kalia Davis, like, I don't know, dude. I see a lot of signs of a team that is well past their prime.
Yeah, last year I was comparing them to the 2015 Seahawks. This looks closer to the 2017 Seahawks, where they still had all the same names, but they had some real positional holes. And it was more of a stars and scrubs model. And that positional hole that year was the offensive line, where they had some real issues and just depth issues across the board. This is a even more dire situation. We don't need to compare every team to a Seahawks team, but I heard Cody Alexander on the NFL Daily podcast the other day, and they were talking about the Niners defense and what they're trying to do with Saleh. He basically had to cut them off and be like, it's going to be really hard to run a defense for them this year. They don't have Trey Greenlaw anymore. They're hyping up D Winters, but that's a stretch. Their defensive line is just decimated. Their secondary, up and stout's a really cool story, but they don't have a lot of stability there. And now they're asking, I think that they said Jason Pinnock to be a Hufanga. And so he's just like, it's going to take time. There's a reason people are going away from the scheme he was running anyway, because of the way teams have been able to attack it. And they just don't have the manpower. With Saleh, we've seen historically big differences when he has the horses versus when he doesn't. It's the same scheme. And then you add the two guards out, receiver room. And again, San Francisco still has a couple great players too. Some of them are pretty old, obviously, with Trent Williams and Mike Williams. Again, he's a pretty raw player, 20 years old, hasn't been on the field since the first week of camp. It's just, I think we're playing them at a really good time. And when you look at just their long-term prospects, I'm with you. Outside of their schedule and just obviously the coaching and the quarterback, you can't objectively look at that roster and see, unless you're like David Lombardi and still think every move they make is the greatest thing in the world. But when they made the Super Bowls, they were loaded. It wasn't just the top guys. They had guys, they were so fast on defense. Their defensive line group was trotting guys out. They had the first Super Bowl, they had Armstead and Buckner, and then the D Ford, and then the second one, they're just rolling guys out. All those guys are gone now. They haven't replaced any of them. They're all rookies basically on that line. There's going to be a big learning curve there. I don't think the stars, and then McCaffrey's older. Ayuk's not in play until week 5 or week at the best. There's just a lot of holes on that roster, man.
As far as vibes and things you're hearing, anything from the Rams or Cardinals, like generally from what I'm looking at, I think there are the more positive things coming out of Arizona than the other groups. I mean, the Rams are in this semi-delusional state of like they are the it team and all they need is Stafford to show up and they'll be, the Super Bowl contender. And maybe that's true. I'm not there yet with that team, but Arizona wise, like anything, like I generally have liked what I've seen from Will Johnson. I think that their defensive line
He
looks
got
better.
burned by your boy yesterday, Dante Thornton. I don't know if he kind of posterized him. I don't know if you saw that.
Did he? I did not see that play.
Yeah, it was kind of a cool play at the corner of the end zone. And that the guy you really liked is the MVS kind of ghost player. Is actually lapped Jack Besh. And Thornton was playing with Gino yesterday, and they threw it right over Will Johnson in the corner of the end zone. It's kind of an interesting play.
What do you think about the Cardinals?
So there's still a group of people, probably like the smarter, like the ringer guys and the athletic guys, and I like the way those guys analyze football. They're pretty high on what's going on in Arizona, and just the amount of talent they've added to their team, they've infused, and the coaching gets a lot of respect in certain circles for like the way they've been able to be functional with a really deficient roster. They just think there's something good going on there. I just can't get past the Kyler Murray Arizona. I still haven't been able to take them seriously. I know they have talent. I still don't see enough of it. I don't think they're really great at anything. The run game is interesting. They have some interesting players. I don't know. If I had to bet on who's going to be last place in the division, I'd still take Arizona. And
I'd take the 49ers.
I think San Francisco is a good bet too. I just like the quarterback a little more.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I still think Arizona is an 8-win team. I think they're going to be scrappy like they've been. They're certainly a little more talented. But they haven't added like studs. They've added Josh Sweat and Calais Campbell. They're good players. Don't get me wrong. Dalvin Tomlinson, sort of a Jaron Reed at best. Like, I don't think that's going to change their fortunes. The Rams, I'm still just so uncomfortable with the Stafford thing. Like, the best thing about the Rams is the defensive line. That's the scariest part about the Rams. Those guys are all emerging at the same time. Jared Verse looks like a total stud. But we haven't heard much about the left tackle. Devontae Adams and Stafford have barely practiced together. Again, I don't even know how impactful that's going to be in general. I've been perplexed by the media's take that these guys are like the next Super Bowl contender in the NFC. I see them kind of what they've been. I see them very similar. They're a 10-win team. They're going to have roller coaster, and now one bad hit to the back, and Jimmy G has to play. I think they're still in the good, not great camp.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the Cardinals' schedule last year. Their losses came against the Bills, the Lions, the Commanders, the Packers, the Seahawks twice, the Vikings, and then their one like kind of bad loss was to the Carolina Panthers in Carolina, and they lost to the Rams as well. I see a team that was like flawed defensively pretty badly last year and relatively good offensively. And I think their defense is going to take a very, it's very projectable that their defense is going to be better than it was last year. Just the addition of Sweat and Calais Campbell, Dalvin Tomlinson, they're going to be better. And if that's the case with this schedule, I think they win 10 games. I think they won 8 games last year. I think they win 10 games this year, and they could win more than that depending on, does Marvin Harrison Jr. take a big leap? Is Trey Benson better than he looks? How good is like Darius Robinson, Walter Nolan? Like those are some, like Max Melton has been pretty bad, but does he look better? Like all those are question marks, but I can see upside for them. I'm just struggling to see like what has to happen for the 49ers to be really good. Like they've got to be healthy.
Every one of their rookies has to hit. Is that doable on the defensive line, which is like a huge learning curve spot?
That's I'm having trouble seeing the upside there. It's not like Trent Williams and George Kittle were out for most of last year. McCaffrey was, and he's definitely going to make a big difference. I don't know, man. I'm gonna.
I just think, the easy schedule and probably, but I think it's just the schedule is really the ceiling for them. But I'm not. Every day I feel like I go on the internet and I see another 49ers injury. And I don't know what's going on at that camp, but I can't remember seeing anything like this. where it's almost daily where one of us is sending a message to the group saying, this guy left practice today.
Well, it's crazy to me when I see the practice reports that they do like hour-long practices. The Seahawks practices are almost always 2 hours or close to it, 90 minutes at least.
Wow.
And so like an hour-long practice, I mean, the warm-ups take 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
So I don't know, man. It's weird stuff down there. I want to ask you, Jeff, about some of the thing that's weird here, which is the Seahawks have not made any moves. They have not signed any contract extensions. They have not signed any new free agents. They have not traded for anybody. We talked about MVS might be a move. This has been a time where, the Justin Coleman trades happen, where, that Connor Williams gets signed late, whatever. Like, things do happen this time. Outside of the MVS thing, do you think Jadeveon Clowney? Do you think anything else happens to this roster with people that aren't on there right now?
Yeah, I think Tuesday, where everyone starts making their moves, I think the Seahawks are going to make a move on someone. I think there's something they're going to tinker with, but I've been shocked that they haven't. You brought it up the other day. It's pretty crazy they have not extended one guy from the 2022 class yet. Sitting on all this cap room, sitting on the cash they cleared out from Noah Fant. They haven't made a trade. They haven't really been in the Trey Hendrickson buzz. It's odd. It's peculiar. I don't know if they're just so happy with what's going on. They don't want to mess with the vibe right now. But even Brady in his roster today said they're still sniffing around Clowney. They're still keeping an eye on him. I don't know how the Nwosu thing changes the equation there. But I've been relatively shocked because John Schneider, especially now that this is his operation, has just been such a roster management guy. And he's done this every year, it feels like. And there are definitely areas of the roster. Like, I'd feel a lot better if they added a linebacker, but they obviously feel a lot differently than I do there. I would have thought they would have done that in the draft or priority UDFA or something. They're pretty comfortable with Patrick O'Connell, who looked relatively okay yesterday. And so I think Schneider will do something just to change out the bottom of the roster. Maybe it's an MVS trade. Maybe it's a depth trade. But like, I saw Brady's 53 and Tyreek Smith made the team. Like, I don't know if I feel great about that. I feel like they can upgrade that spot. I'd rather Jared Ivey, but nose tackle, I don't know if they're sniffing around some guys. Wide receiver, they might be. I think there are some spots on this team that can definitely get better with someone else's cuts or someone else's trades. I think they'll be looking to make a couple moves.
Yeah, I think the number one move in my mind would be the Dalton Reisner addition.
Yeah.
And with Christian Haynes having some sort of pec injury that sounds like it might be an IR kind of situation. I projected him not making the roster as a cut. Or a trade potentially. This might be a way the Seahawks stash him for another year and see if they can get someone to pick him up in the offseason. But Reisner, like, I think the guard depth is pretty concerning.
Yeah.
For this team, there's not a single guard outside of the starting two that I think I'd feel good playing in a full game.
So if Haynes is out,
yeah,
and Bradford sucks or gets hurt, who's next up?
You're talking about Mason Richmond.
Yeah, where you kick Sundell inside and
right, or you have Sundell play there and Olu plays center.
And you're moving two spots, and that's not ideal either.
Yeah, but it would be that would be your best five for sure,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. And I think they'd feel fine with Olu there, but yeah, not great. That would be my number one move. Otherwise, Jeff, part of what strikes me is usually at this time, I'm like, man, they really need to, like, if they can find somebody at this spot, it'd be great. I don't really feel that way. I feel pretty solid about all that. And knock on wood, part of that is they're pretty healthy. Like, a lot of the guys that they went into camp with, they're exiting camp with. If anything, they've gotten kind of a little healthier with Uchenna coming off. So I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a waiver wire pickup that they go after. I think they feel pretty good about the back end of their roster.
Yeah, and the nose tackle thing has gotten a little more comfortable with Peely, and Ohana seemed to have a pretty decent camp, and that was an area of weakness. Riley Mills at some point is going to be back. I don't know what the projection is there. You probably have a better feel than I do, but that's going to help that kind of 5 technique depth, the guys who can play there. He's a guy I'm going to be really excited to see next year in kind of the offseason program and training camp, but corner, they're pretty good. Like, I'm not They don't have a great fourth or fifth corner situation. Shaq Griffin had a kind of a tough day yesterday, but as a fourth corner, it's pretty fine. Rasul Douglas is still out there if they ever need to switch, but the linebacker thing strikes me as just like a huge red flag disaster zone. But every time they ask Mike about this, they talk about Patty O'Connell and Drake Thomas. And at some point, we have to give him some benefit of the doubt. This is kind of his pet position, and they have development program. They're developing guys there. But just seeing what the linebackers did last year when they had the wrong guys in there and how it just crushed the infrastructure, the whole defense, I think they feel differently than I do. So I don't expect to move there, but I would love one.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got a couple super chats here. TJM89, who's been a member for 6 months, says, "What's your guys?" I think assuming our take on Ivy, trade MVS. What position? I don't know what that means, but Jared Ivy, I had making the roster.
Yeah, I wonder if he's asking whether they could trade MVS for a player. No, you're getting like a throwaway draft pick.
Yeah,
and they've given away some picks already, so just recouping one of those, it does help. So no, you're not getting like a linebacker for MVS. You're essentially dumping him off your team, so you don't have to pay him.
Yeah, Jared Ivy looked hurt. He was hurt initially, came back and played, so that's good news. I don't think you can put him on waivers and expect him to get to the practice squad. I think he's too big of a name. He has played too well in the preseason games. I think he's got to be on this final roster. We'll see what happens with Mike Morris, who, got dinged up a little bit in the joint practice. But that's the other thing, Jeff. We got one more super chat I'll get to, and then if you have any other topics, let me know. But I would much rather have what happened this week, where the Seahawks pretty clearly gave it to the Packers during the joint practice with the starters, and then get their butts kicked by the third string in the preseason game, than vice versa. So I think people lose the forest through the trees a little bit about what happened this week. Matt and Beaverton, who's been a member for a year, thanks, dude, says, "Can you give us a quick rundown of important dates, cut down, practice squad finalized?" So Tuesday is cut down day. Wednesday is when practice squads are finalized. Wednesday is also, in terms of important dates, Jeff, Wednesday is also the season prediction show for us, which you have not filled out your spreadsheet predictions yet.
I was waiting for yesterday.
I want to see what Jeff's predictions are. And I think Thursday, we'll see how the schedule comes out. I think Thursday is going to be when I try to do kind of a full day season preview. And I'm just going to see how many different guests I can get on to talk about all sorts of things. So fun week ahead. All right, Jeff. Anything else we haven't talked about that's on your mind that we should hit?
No, we pretty much covered all the things that are going on right now. There's a lot of, obviously, the Sam Howell thing didn't deserve much airtime. The Milroe thing was probably the big talking point coming out of the game, and now it's wait and see if they have a next move up their sleeve or anything else exciting coming before it's get ready for the season. But the big story that I wanted to see was more, I said it last week, I was more curious how the joint practice went than the preseason game. And it was cool to hear that JSN was kind of the start of the show on both sides. And sounded like that the Seattle had some trouble defending tight ends and playing George Kittle week one. I think that kind of made me wonder about the linebacker depth. And I'm very curious to see what goes on with Nick Immanwori at the beginning of the year, because he had a really strong start to the camp, it seemed like. And since we've seen the games, it's been pretty quiet. I don't know if they're holding him back. There hasn't been a lot of buzz coming out with him lately. And so it's just going to be curious we're not going to know much of anything till that game in a couple weeks. So now Tuesday is a big day coming up. I think that's when everyone has to set their 53. Is that Tuesday or is that Wednesday?
Tuesday is 53. Wednesday is practice squad.
Yeah. So that's where you see all the waiver claims. So Tuesday, you're going to see 1 million receivers get cut from other teams. So I don't think the Seahawks are going to be stealing any of those guys. I think they're going to stick with the 5 guys they have. And it's been one of those days you just stay on Twitter all day and watch Brian do his shows, because that's one of the fun days of the year, just to follow all the transactions, because it used to be done over. They used to go to 75 and then it's all done in one day now.
It's a flood. I do wonder if tomorrow will be a big trade day where teams that know they're going to cut somebody talk to other GMs and like, hey, I've got this corner, you've got this receiver, we're both going to cut them, let's trade them so we don't have to chase them in free agency or waivers. So yeah, that definitely could be a big trade day. All right, dude. Well, for folks that haven't already, make sure you give the show a like and subscribe. Make sure you follow over on Instagram. We are just about 500 followers away from 10,000. We get to 10,000 before the first week of the season. I will be giving away tickets to the 49ers game. I've got club level seats I will be giving away. So let's get to 10,000 followers on Instagram. Great to also get to 25,000 subscribers here on YouTube. We're just pushing up to 24 right now. So let's get that done. Head on over to HBTix, HBTIX.com. Tons of tickets for that 49ers game. Let's sell your tickets to Seahawks fans. Let's buy your tickets from Seahawks fans. Let's make sure as many Seahawks fans are in seats for that week 1 game, hbtix.com. If you go to patreon.com/hawkblogger, you get ad-free audio of this show, as well as access to the Discord channel, as well as getting verified over on HBTix so that everyone knows you are a tried and true Seahawks fan, which helps all of that happen. All right, everybody, that will do it for this Seahawks Sunday. I am Brian Nemhauser. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Take care.